I had no idea what to expect from the opponent, because I was mainly expected to play against somebody else. So I had a brief look in this chess space, this professional chess software, to prepare against an opponent, so that I have some idea, some direction where the game is going to head, because maybe I would choose e4, maybe I would choose d4, depending on the opponent. Actually, against one guy, I had decided I'm going to play the first move d4, because he played the queen's Indian, and I thought it would be great to test it from the white's perspective, because I play queen's Indian myself, so I know quite a bit. But against this opponent, I didn't know nothing. So I played e4. I thought, whatever. So be it, so be it. I'm just going to play e4. He plays c5 and g6. And the hyper-accelerated dragon, well, let's just put it this way. We go back a long way. And I played this line many, many times. And those of you who have been watching my channel regularly, you know that I've created video series, stream series, so to speak. I call them GM Neiksans Bootcamp. And in my bootcamps, I explain various theoretical ideas. And among them, there's the Maroczy Bind. And if you're not sure, if you haven't seen it, maybe it's a good idea for you to revisit, because I think it was number 4. I think so. I don't remember. I've created something like 35, 36 bootcamps up to date. And one of the earliest is the Maroczy Bind with e4. And I have a very nice relationship with the Maroczy Bind, because I do believe that the Maroczy Bind is one of the most annoying systems against any Sicilian position. I mean, it's not only in Sicilians, it's also in some English openings. The idea is to squeeze the opponent, take life out of him, because when your opponent, or when you are setting up the Maroczy Bind, you are aiming for space advantage. You're aiming for a long-term pressure. Accelerated Dragon is not very good. Yeah, it's not very good, but there's a couple of reasons why it's not good. And actually, you know, I've had quite a lot of discussion with some other colleagues, also in the national team of Latvia. And we share different opinions, because there's another grandmaster who says, this is not how you play against a hyper-accelerated dragon. And I said, well, listen, I mean, I do agree that opinions are different. This is according to my style. And he says, for example, something like knight c3, bishop e3, bishop c4 is more interesting, more fun. Well, I don't really argue. I guess it really depends on the style. So my style is go for the positional squeeze. c4, knight c6, bishop e3. We keep the control of the d4 square. Of course, we never take it here. This would be disaster. So think about some strategic idea like b takes, and black controls d4 square for nothing. So that's why we are not going to take on c6 ourselves. So it's very important that we keep guard of the d4 square. And if black takes something like twice, this completely hands over you all of the central squares. So you win all of the squares here, and you are having very close of controlling all the critical squares here. So normally a black is interested to have some pressure in the center. So that's why it's knight f6 and knight c3. And knight g4, by the way, is a very interesting idea from the dragon, because once again, knight c6 is a very typical intermezzo, knight a3. Versus hyper-accelerated dragon, c3 is a great option. Yes, c complex, I agree. It's great. I played it myself. It's just me. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the Maroczy Bind structures, and that's why I just play the Maroczy Bind whenever I can. And this position is just not great for white, because one of the most important pieces for white is to keep the Dachshund bishop. In at least in open Sicilians, the Dachshund bishop is one of the most important pieces. And if you trade it, you do it only for the Dachshund bishop, not for the knight. So that's why queen g4, knight d4, and queen d1. And I played a couple of games in this line. So one of the most interesting combinations here for white is, for black is to play e5, keep the knight on d4 here. And normally black plays d6, but there was one very nice game I played once in a Baltic Zonal tournament against a fellow grandmaster from Lithuania. I played queen d2, and he went very aggressive at the king side because his bishop here is positioned on the long diagonal, and he is opening more files, more diagonals, but in the end, it backfired because all he did is created weaknesses in his position. And I was able to score a very, very nice victory, which is perhaps not the story of this game. But this idea of knight g4, it's very interesting, and I've seen that it's quite popular among grandmasters. So he plays show castle, and now I make sure this doesn't happen. So bishop e2, d6 seems to be necessary, short castle, bishop d7. There's a couple of ways how black can play this. He can take on d4, and maybe play bishop e6, rook c8, which is also pretty much playable. So he played bishop d7, f3. Yeah, by the way, I think that in the database, the most played move is queen d2, which I'm not really sure. Yeah, a grueling positional grind. Exactly, Theo. This is what it is. But after queen d2, I just don't like it that it gives black more options of this knight g4. Takes, f3. It's still a great position, but do I need this? And that's why I play f3 right away. Usually I play f3 right away. So there's one thing we need to make sure it doesn't happen. It's queen b6. And now black is going for some tactical tricks. So one might think, where's the trick? Because I play queen d2. Take. And this is a very typical dragon idea. Yes, black wants a tactical fight. Yes, that's a very good point. And not a positional grind. That is a very good point. But there's knight a4. Knight a4, queen a5, knight b5. And black cannot really play a6 because bishop b6, he's landing in a lot of trouble. I think I even won games like this. So the queen is trapped. So black cannot do that. So he took on d4, and this is the classical idea. You know, in general, I think it makes sense for white to escape trading pieces. Why is that? Because white is the one who has some space advantage. There is one very nice game I was showing to my students. It was played by the great Tigran Petrosyan against, I don't remember who was his opponent, but Petrosyan was playing, thank you Monsopia for your sub, appreciate that. He was playing in some decades old game, and one of his ideas was to play f3 and knight b3. Try to use the fact that black's position is slightly cramped, because you see this position, there's this feeling that black has a bit too many pieces positioned on the last three ranks. But I'm not sure why not knight b3 here, why nobody plays knight b3. Maybe there's a reason. Probably it makes perfect sense. Now I started to wonder why it's f3, why everybody plays f3 or queen d2, and why not knight b3. So he took it to solve some of his space advantage ideas, problems. So queen d2, and now the very interesting moment is here, knight e7. And do you know what is the most played move in this position? It's actually quite incredible. It's quite paradoxical. but it is mentioned in my Maroczy Bind bootcamp. I think it was number 4 or number 5. Somebody please correct me. I don't remember. So black's idea is to take on d4 and trade queens. So he is aiming for a position where he wants to put the knight on c5. He wants to play something like f6, e5, maybe put the knight on c5, bishop on e6, and press on this bishop on e2. So one of the most paradoxical ideas of the Maroczy Bind is to play bishop e3. And this is crazy, right? Because you're looking at this position, you see that you don't trade the powerful Dachshund bishop. But actually bishop e3 is a very deep idea, because white is aiming for a type of position when black will run out of moves. It might just sound to a completely something crazy to you, but I really mean it, because black plays usually a5 because a6 is not a threat, right? It's very difficult for him to play b5. So he plays a5 with the idea to play a4, queen a5, knight c5, establish a very nice control of the dark squares. That's why I make sure it doesn't happen. I play b3 so that a4 is met by b4. I don't allow him to play a4. He plays knight c5. I go here. And now the most amazing thing about this position is black has no active moves, because every single active move, whatever black does, it comes with a concession. I mean, think about this. a4 is b4. b5 is never happening. e6, bishop e5 is an idea to organize something at a king side, but it weakens the d6 square. f5 seriously weakens the center. So one of the most popular ideas that black usually does, he goes for queen b6, rook c8, and as long as white knows this setup, rook c2 to meet queen b4 with queen c1 and make sure that black doesn't have a4, black is running out of moves because a4 loses. It's a3. He loses a piece. Queen a5, queen b6, b4, that's it. He's done. And normally, when somebody's playing the Maroczy Bind up to this moment, and you very quickly play rook b1, rook c1, rook c2, black usually knows that you know the setup, and he goes for this very interesting idea, queen d8. Try to trade the Dachshund bishops, and this gives you a million tempos. Now, queen b8 also is not very good because b5 is not happening though. You just start to prepare against it. g3, bishop g2, rook e1, because now the rook on b1 doesn't do anything, and as soon as black plays bishop h6, we close the action. And if I remember correctly, I think I've had already a couple of games in this variation playing online. At least I can take on c5 and e5. So I'm using the weakened b5 and d5 squares, so black pretty much regrets having included a5. I exclude the bishop on g7 out of the game, and because of the powerful bishop, because of the powerful knight, I'm in the game. I mean, to be honest, I don't remember what was happening after bishop c3. I'm just showing you the idea. Maybe there is some kind of a direct attack. And black is just suffering because of this included h5. But I think all of this I mentioned in my Maroczy Bind bootcamp. So, I mean, check it out. This knowledge is not really outdated. Hello, Danji D90. Thank you for your sub. Appreciate that. So what happened here? He had a deep think, and he was thinking what to do. So I want to slowly rearrange my pieces. Think about moves like, okay, maybe this rook b1 is going to happen. Think about moves like rook e1, bishop f1, g3, bishop g2, rook d1, f4. I mean, for him, it's, you know, it's very difficult to play. And that's why he decided immediately push f5. And this is exactly what I was waiting for, because like this, right? Thank you, thank you. Now I have targets. Now you reveal your cards very early. And I take it because now I have the open e-file and I want to create some targets on the pawns on d6 and the pawns on e7. So I don't think I want to allow him to push f4. Let's say a bishop d3 and f4. Because I cannot take it. This is hanging. Bishop c3, and I just lose a piece. And if I don't take it, now he has an excellent outpost on e5. So think about ideas like g5, queen g6, g4, h4. You know, I have the greatest respect for black's position. I really like it because I've always liked positions which give a simple to play position, go for the attack, even if engines sometimes don't understand them. Because humans are playing it out, not engines. So that's why I take it. I take on f5 myself. I don't give this option for black to close the center with f4. And he took it with the rook. Maybe g takes is also possible, but I would pretty much employ the same idea. And now you look at this white, this black center. No matter what he's gonna do, these are weaknesses. Thank you, Denji D. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that you like them. Thank you. So I guess something like rook e1, f4, bishop f3, knight e5. These are the typical ideas. Maybe, I'm not really sure. Maybe rook e1. Rook e1. Ah, wait, he can play f4. Maybe f4 first. f4, then rook e1, bishop f3, knight e5. I think it's all about the details already. The plan is very typical. To play bishop f3, play knight e5, and start to press these weaknesses. But then again, you're probably wondering, I mean, okay, black didn't really have to play f5, but you have to understand, it's the entire concept of the Maroczy Bind, right? You want to squeeze your opponent out of the counterplay. So you set up the Maroczy Bind for exactly this purpose. You take space, you slowly maneuver, and then you want to provoke him to do something like this, like f5. So I took it, he took it, and okay, now I played a bit too smart. You know, I should have just played f4, and I had a feeling that, I mean, f4 should be really the move, because I want to play either bishop d3 f5, or bishop g4 rook e1, knight e5, bishop e6. It's such a natural move. But I was looking at this move, and then I thought, I can do something smarter. And then I saw rook e1. I was so proud of this move. Because I felt that I'm going to wait for black to define the placement of the knight. Let's say a knight e5, I play 4. And now I win tempos. And this is time, extra time for me. And if he is going to play something else, I'm going to play bishop d3 f4, same idea. And after knight c5, I had this very deep idea. Bishop d1, bishop c2, I avoid the trade, and I'm still going for this pressure at the e-file and maybe at 45. So he had actually a very interesting idea trying to complicate matters, which I saw. Because after queen b6, bishop c2, I saw that he has queen b4. So the idea is there's an intermezzo move, bishop takes in c3. So my calculation was this. I'm going to play knight e5. If he takes it, I take it. And I take it. It's an extra exchange. And even if he somehow takes on c4 and takes on f5, I felt that, I mean, it's an extra exchange, right? I mean, I can take on c5, take on e7. I mean, should be great. Although he can take on a2, but I felt that it should be giving me good chances to play this for the win. But you know what I missed? He can take with the rook. I didn't see this at all. So this simply escaped my attention. And after c takes bishop b5, suddenly black is very active. So it's not it's not a problem for me, but I would have to pick up some quite difficult moves. And black is incredibly active, so I'm not sure if this is a strong compensation for black, but the entire sequence of sacrificing in exchange for opponent is very interesting. And I think that's why this entire idea of bishop d1, bishop c2, it was a bit too much. And that's why I had to do immediately like this f4, rook e1, either bishop d3 or bishop g4, knight e5, and just go straight. But okay. He didn't find it. So he played queen d7. And now I play bishop c2. He played a very strange move, you know? He played rook f8, which I didn't understand why. Because I felt that rook f7 has to be played because the rook on f7 protects the pawn on e7. Also, he wants to double the rooks, just in case. I mean, do something at the king side. And it just made more sense. And I thought I'm going to play knight e5. Knight e5, something like queen d5. And because of the two bishops and some weaknesses in black's position, I felt that I'm definitely much better here. And now he plays rook f8, you know? And now I'm looking at this position and I'm wondering, can I take the pawn? Because, you see, there's bishop c5. Bishop c5 takes, queen d7, it's a free pawn. What I didn't really like is that I give so much activity for my opponent. So even if he blundered this pawn, I wasn't really sure if he blundered it or not. After something like rook f7, I had a feeling that, or even maybe bishop c6, I had a feeling that he is way too active, way too active. Let's say something like knight e5, a4, and the question is, do I really enjoy this pawn with such a powerful bishop on d4? I felt not. So I didn't take it, although I could have won the pawn on the spot. And I decided that since my f4, f5 idea now is not going anywhere, I need to rearrange my pieces. So I played rook d1, and I'm ready to put this rook in e1. Of course, it comes with a loss of a tempo, but I felt that at some point I'm going to play bishop d4 and the rook in e1, and the rook in e1 is going to be perfectly placed. So you're wondering probably, why didn't I play immediately? Like rook e1 and rook d1. Maybe I should have, but then again, I wasn't sure where is he going to position the knight. Maybe on e5, maybe on c5. So I felt that after he already defined himself that he positions the knight on c5, now it's time to put my bishop on c2, and now I can rearrange my pieces, and also, by the way, threaten to take on d7. But of course, it was not a primary threat. I just rearranged my pieces. And I was expecting him to play something like queen c7. He did not. By the way, queen c7, a very interesting idea by the engine. h4. Use the fact that white has a very powerful bishop. I didn't see this during the game, by the way, tell you honestly. But it makes sense. It makes sense to open this long diagonal and try to get to these weak pawns on g6 and h7. So he played queen e6. I felt that was a strange move. Rook e1, queen f7, and knight e5. I'm playing according to the plan. And I was expecting that he's going to obviously take because I'm threatened with some knight b6, knight e7, bishop c5, knight e7 ideas. And I felt that rook e8 is going to be very difficult for him because queen a5 still drops a pawn. So even if he might win it back at some point on a2, for me it felt it's not very human. It's not very human to play like that, so I was sure that he's not going to play rook e8 because the pawn on a5 always is hanging and he cannot really play b6. So bishop d5, I expected it. So queen d5. Engine likes c takes on d5, but after something like bishop f6, I wasn't sure if I will be able to find a good place to activate this bishop. Maybe I can. Something like f4, g3, h4, h5. I'm not sure. So I decided to take with the queen. And I was aiming for a position when he would take it and play bishop f6. So this is my position that I thought that I'm going for. And then after moves like f4, g3, king g2, h4, h5. This is one weakness according to Neiksans. This is second weakness according to Neiksans. Maybe along the way I snatched the pawn on c5 somewhere. So I felt that because I kept two bishops, because he has some weaknesses, a4, b4, remember, right, is always gonna be there. I felt that this is great for me. And now he suddenly played b6. And I was like, wait a second. Did you just again blunder a pawn? Because I can take the pawn on e7 on the spot. So I was thinking, takes and rook e7. It's a free pawn. Yeah, by the way, you know what the engine is saying here? I didn't even notice this. There's bishop g5. Makes perfect sense. For some reason, I didn't even see that I can attack this pawn by other means, because the same rook e8 is the same rook e7. And he cannot take it because there's a pin. Yeah, by the way, this bishop g5 somehow completely escaped my attention. So I took on c5. He took it, and rook e7 was clearly a shock to him. I could see, right? I think he realized that he blundered the pawn on e7 because he couldn't take it because of the spin. And now I really, really, really wanted to make this idea work. I wanted to take it with the idea to play bishop e4, which would allow me to win an exchange. But I just couldn't find a way how to make it work. Because this wins an exchange, right? So any checks on d4, no big deal, just king f1. And bishop d5 is next. Should be easy for me to win. But the problem, he takes with the king. And I thought I can play bishop e4. I found rook a7. I was calculating this. He plays very stubborn king e8. And there's just no follow-up. Despite the fact that I have a very nice position, very menacing checks, and he's seriously experiencing some discomfort, but there's no follow-up, and he has bishop d4 check as well at some point. So I thought, okay, it directly doesn't work. I thought, what about bishop e4 right away? Because bishop e4, it would seemingly be the same. And he would still play rook a7, and maybe, again, there's the same idea of bishop d5, king e8. But as soon as I saw that he can play at least e6, and now if I win the queen for two rooks, I wasn't even sure how great is this. Something like king g7, e5, very powerful bishop on d4. It could be difficult for me to crash through, because I saw no easy points of penetration. Queen side is pretty much locked, and f4. My own king is also vulnerable at some point. So I didn't do it. And I decided to take the pawn instead. But I was comparing these lines of bishop e4. Try to understand maybe that is better. So he took it. And another choice. Yeah, his bishop is very good. And another choice, I really was tempted to play this. Because after c takes, if I manage to put my bishop on d3, on c4 and a4, this is an outside pass pawn, which is protected by the bishop. But the problem is, I was not sure if this position is so great. because essentially I have no open files for my rook, and that was the biggest problem. Because if I go for something like this, there's a very big chance that this endgame is a draw, because we have the opposite color bishops, and since there's no other pieces, the likelihood of the endgame being a draw dramatically increases. So I definitely didn't want to go here. So if I have to enter an opposite color bishop position, I need a heavy piece, at least one. And that's why I felt I have to take the rook, because he cannot deal with both rooks at the same time. And after rook e8, take it, bishop e4, I evaluated this position to be winning. Because despite the fact we have opposite color bishops on the board, I have an extra pawn. And according to Neiksans, he has weakness here, and he has a potential weakness here. So I thought I'm going to activate my rook somewhere on the 7th rank, and somehow find a good moment to push h5, creating a second weakness, and then with the march of the king, somehow decide the game, the fate of the game, in favor for white. So that was my thought process. So according to the engines, of course, I was absolutely correct. So this is technically winning endgame. Yeah, now my bishop is looking really good. So first I'm going after the pawn on b6. So he found a very good setup. Rook e7, of course, I don't trade. King f2, bring my king in the game as quickly as possible. Rook e6. Okay, maybe here I made a slight inaccuracy. I should have played first bishop d5 and only then rook b8, so that he cannot position his bishop on a more active square. But you know, maybe it doesn't really matter, because now he can play, for example, g5, h6, and position his pawns on the color of his bishop, which is the best technique that the weaker side he's supposed to do. And of course, black also badly wants to trade rooks, but there's just no way it's gonna happen. So I played rook b8 right away. Now he played bishop d6. So his idea was to meet rook b6 with bishop g3. Nice trick. But of course, I'm not going to fall into this. So rook b7 check. And now he has problems to protect his pawn, because bishop e7, now it's very passive, and his rook is overloaded. So either way he goes, he loses something. I think he already drops a piece here. Yeah, so he cannot do that. And after rook e7, I just take the pawn. And now there's no more bishop g3 anymore. So this intermezzo check, it changes everything. And after rook b7, king h6, this pawn is probably going to fall. Bishop d5, bishop g8. So the only move is king h8. And now I play g3. And my idea, which is according to the endgame technique of Mark Dvoretsky, one of the biggest gurus in chess endgames. One of his ideas, which he described in the book, is you position, if you're the stronger side and you're playing the opposite color bishop endgame, you position your pawns on the color of your opponent's bishop to limit its activity. And I'm trying to get to these pawns on g6 and h7, create another weakness. So this is exactly what happened. Yeah, maybe there's, by the way, one final trick, is I didn't play bishop d5, check, and I thought that he's very active. Rook b6, rook e3, and I thought that even if I'm having two extra pawns, I felt that I gave to my opponent too many active chances, but I simply missed bishop e4. I didn't see this move at all. And after bishop e4, I take away the critical c2 square. I'm simply up 2 pawns, and there's another pawn falling. So this was still playable. So what I did, I'd included h4. And now, since I'm threatening to play h5, create a weakness on g6 or h7, because I have a very good rook on the 7th rank, and this bishop is attacking the pawn on h7 as well. Check, king f1, I guard e2 square for potential rook penetration. And now I play bishop to e5, and now you see the difference. If he now plays rook e3, now his pawn on g6 is under attack. So that was the idea why I felt that maybe I could have played bishop d5 right away. But why risk it with rook e3? Because h4 is still something I want to do it myself, because I want to create some weaknesses for black at the king side. And now this is simply with less risk, because now this pawn on g6 is going to fall as well. So he played rook f6, and now I just march towards the king side. Yeah, rook e7, very nice move. Taking away some extra squares for the bishop to attack. Bishop e5, bishop e1. Here. And now he's simply running a lot of moves. So according to the engine, one of the best moves is actually h5. This is a crazy move, because he simply creates more targets for me to press. So I was thinking something like f4, king g2, king f3, king e4. Maybe let me just make a couple of useless moves. Something like this, something like this, something like this. And find a good moment to push f5. So that was my thought process. So after the pawn trade, I'm getting to the pawn on h5. So maybe I can already trade rooks at some point. Maybe I trade the rooks, I get the pawn on h5, and then I simply decide the fate of the game by having two connected pass pawns, and they are moving synchronically together. I'm not really 100% sure, but I think something like this could work. And of course, he didn't do it. So he played g5. And it kind of makes sense, you know, because he positions his pawns on the color of his bishop, which is a very good technique. So I played h takes on g5. By the way, h5 was also very interesting, with the idea to play bishop e4, bishop g6, put the rook on h7, and snatch the pawn on h6. I was thinking actually about this, and this was pointed out by one of my teammates after the game. Why didn't I go after the pawn on h6? But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure that even if I put my rook on h6, maybe there's some variation when he can try to force me to trade the rooks. And then even having two extra pawns at the king side with obstacle bishops, it still might be drawish. So that was my thought process. I mean, I felt that for him also the pawn on h6 will be more easy to defend than the pawn on g5. And that's why I took it. That's why I took on g5. Because now the pawn on g5 is really vulnerable. And actually it was very good, because now after king h5, bishop d2, I had a study-like victory. Very beautiful, you know? There's actually a breakthrough, which works. f4. Obviously, I saw the idea, but I saw the move, but I didn't see the idea. And if he takes it, there's a very beautiful move, king g5. So it would actually take quite a lot of imagination, because where's the big point of this move? First, it's very important to understand what's the point. The point is the checkmate idea. That's the point. Because of my rook on the 7th rank and the bishop on d5, I'm actually using my limited resources to checkmate black. And there's no rook g8, you see, right? Rook g8, I just take it. And despite it doesn't matter what he has here, I'm just checkmating him. And he is overloaded. There's just no way for him to defend king g6 and defend for me taking the pawn on f4. So after bishop c3, I'm going to take it. I'm going to play f5. Let me make some useless moves here. And the king is going here. I just collect everything. So his king is completely disconnected from the game. So I felt that this should be somehow winning. Or maybe even king g5 at some point, I'm not sure. Fine, king, yeah, by the way, king g5 and just play rook b6 and take it. Maybe that's even simpler. So the bishop on e6 and the pawn on f5 are seriously limiting his maneuverability. And the same applies also, of course, for rook d6. I just take it. King g4, f5, bishop e6. It's exactly the same. So I didn't see this idea. It's very beautiful idea. So I decided, okay, whatever. I'm gonna go back. And my idea was to use a different route and then try to somehow penetrate through the center. And he very quickly collapsed because he insisted to stand and do nothing, while he should have tried to push me slightly back. But to be honest, to understand that this position is holding and that position is not holding, it's not very human. For example, that I cannot play the same f4. Because after takes, rook f6, bishop c1, he organizes just in time the counterplay against the pawn on f4, and if I play rook e4, his king escapes from the prison. Okay, I mean, it's not very obvious, but I could definitely play this f4 idea at some point later. So this is the best move according to the engine. The engine was saying white is, I mean, black is still somehow holding this position. Okay. But he didn't find it, and after a couple of moves, his position already was very shaky. I mean, it's been shaky for a long time. And I felt that he had to try rook f5 to stop my idea to play king e2 so that he can trade rooks. But I can still play rook b7. And now I thought that this smart should decide at some point the game. I was just... I'm not sure. I was not sure, should I go for this position? Because this is the type of structure that I normally don't want to do, but I was hoping that based on some dynamics, based on domination, let's say something like king e4, rook e7, bishop e6, something like king goes here. I was feeling that I should still have decent chances to win the game, but I was not 100% sure if I want to push g4 at all, because I do want to create an outside pass pawn. Maybe even f4 and g4. Could be an idea to play king f3, g5, king g4, g6, go for the same domination, same checkmate idea on h7, and he's essentially playing without the king, right? So there's the big difference. I mean, king is a piece. It is a piece. But this guy is not a piece. It's just a dead meat. So that's the major difference. But he didn't find it, and he tried to go for some active defense, and he wrongly assumed that my idea is to get to this pawn on b6. So I cannot play king e4, that would be terrible. So I played rook b7, and he took it. Yeah, he thought I'm gonna take on b6, he's gonna play escape the king with a king g7, etc. And now king e4 was a major shock to black, because he realized this is a mate. So it's not only mate here, but mate on h7. And his position just collapses very quickly. So rook h2, only move. This move doesn't change anything. Check. It's just a mate. So despite the fact we have opposite our bishops, the material is equal, I'm just having an extra king. So he played rook h2, king f5, rook h6, stop my king getting to g6, but now I just collect the pawn on g5. And now this position is easily winning, because I will push my pawns aggressively forward, and at some point either create a passed pawn or disconnect his rook from this idea of g6 and rook h7, so this is game over. So he very quickly blundered, played bishop g7, and after rook b8, he drops more material, because after king h7 is bishop e4. And that's it. So it was overall a very nice game, and I have to give, of course, a lot of respect for my opponent. He was putting up very, very good resistance for the most part of the game, because when I thought I reached this endgame, I thought this is piece of cake, normally. I mean, I felt that my technique is good enough, and I clearly knew at least the idea of the winning plan, but he was really holding, and putting up very good defense, and it wasn't easy. The only shame is that I missed this idea of king h5 and f4. Yeah, this is a shame, of course. f4 and king g5 would have been a very beautiful victory. So, yeah, this rook and f6, unfortunately he has to move. So once again, either I play king g6, rook h7, or just collect the pawn once again. Something like f5, bishop e6, rook b7, collect the pawn on b6, and it's 2 extra pawns, and the black king is still disconnected from the game. So I think at some point I missed a victory about here. King h3, king g2, king f1, but I don't think it was really at any moment in a real risk. So the last mistake black did was rook a2, but maybe he should have went back, something like rook h6. Rook h6, king e4, but I have a feeling this is losing anyway. So f4, g takes, f5, bishop e6, the pawn drops, so should be winning anyway. So what can we learn from this game? It's not always the opposite color bishops, they're not always drawn, right? And I don't know, this is one of the biggest assumptions, is that people are going for the opposite color bishops positions, and maybe actually this would make a nice boot camp that I could explore. Is that one of the yeah, indeed, one of the greatest assumptions is that they're afraid, people are afraid to go into these positions because they think that with the bishops on the board, even if you have an extra pawn, it's a draw. But now you see, right, all that matters is the piece activity, and one rook on the board, very active rook on the board, makes all the difference. And of course I had a very nice bonus, which is an extra king. So because black simply didn't have it.